Everybody, you're very, very, very welcome to this next afternoon of talks that we have lined up for you. I'm Nick Hall. I'm the founder of the Digital Tourism Think Tank. And as you've probably noticed, WTM has really, really upped their game this year when it comes to talks. Well, we're really excited about the sessions that we've lined up for you in the next couple of hours because we have some amazing speakers that are going to be talking to you about content and where content's going. In this session, we have a great speaker who I know you've all been looking forward to, going to be talking to you about mastering social-first content. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to welcome to the stage Jeremy Jauncey, who is the founder and CEO of Beautiful Destinations. Jeremy, please come to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Amazing. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, obviously, WTM, for the opportunity. Nick, all of your team at the Digital Tourism Think Tank. I can just about make out a few friendly faces in the audience. So people that I know, thank you for coming to support. It's always an honor speaking in front of you. And actually, many, many more faces of people that I don't know, and hopefully future friends and people I'll get to speak to after the talk. We're doing a quick Q&A at the end, so if you do have any questions, then please answer those. And I really hope outside, after the talk is finished, I'll be able to come and see you too. Also, there is a group of people who contacted me on social media and said that they follow Beautiful Destinations or they follow me and they're coming to the talk because of that, and some people that I met outside. Thank you so much. It really does. It does mean a lot. So I promise in return, the next 30 minutes will be high energy, it will be engaging, it will be positive, it will be a celebration of all the amazing things that travel and tourism represents, and hopefully that's what you've come to know from Beautiful Destinations. But I'm going to talk about the power of mobile visual communication, and more specifically, what that means in terms of social-first content, the power and the importance of social-first content, how you can use it, whether you are a multinational travel brand with billions of dollars in marketing, whether you are the tourism secretary of an amazing country trying to raise the profile of all the things that you do, or whether you are just a passionate and engaged and loving traveler like I am, and you just want to up your game on social media. So that is what I'm going to cover off. Very quick introduction for those in the room that don't know. Beautiful Destinations is the creative agency behind the largest travel community in the world today on social media. We have almost 13 million followers in 180 countries, speaking 24 different languages that come to us every single day for inspiration about how to travel, where to stay, what to eat, all of the amazing things that encapsulate that travel experience. And this community of people are so powerful. They are so positive, and they've enabled us to build this brand that celebrates all of the best things about the world. We hope all of the best things about humankind and all of the best things about getting out and actually exploring. Now, the idea for us is to pull together this community, and they will range from National Geographic photographers to sports stars, to movie actors, to Kardashians and musicians and everyone in between that follow our account. But, and most importantly, the vast majority of our community, of the people that follow the things that we do, are everyday people. People like you or like I that passionately care about travel, that realize the importance that it plays in society, and turn to us to help them have that moment of wanderlust, that moment that I know every one of you guys in the audience can feel and can relate to when you see that amazing piece of content, that amazing video that takes you 1,000 miles away and reminds you how amazing the world is, how beautiful it is to get out and travel, and how much it actually means when we do this together and we share. So, I'm going to kick us off with a few statistics that you may already be familiar with. The first is actually around this growth of smartphone technology and this growth of social media. Never before in the history of the world has such a movement towards a communication medium happened at the size, at the scale, and at the speed as we have seen people over the last 5 years adopt smartphone technology and adopt social media. Now, this is made all the more real by the fact that we now know 70% of internet traffic, 70% of the consumption of digital media is now happening around the world on smartphones. In the past decade, that has been dominated, as we know, by the desktop and the personal computer. When you consider that massive growth in smartphone usage and you combine that with social media, and we know now that 1 in every 5 minutes around the world spent on a mobile phone is spent on either Instagram or Facebook, you can see the enormous power of what is happening in society and the enormous power of what you have in your hand right now. Now, these statistics here on the slide, they further emphasize that. Over 1/3 of the world's population uses Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, or WhatsApp every single month. The vast majority of those people, and probably the people here in the room today, use that every single day as the dominant communication method for the things that they want to talk to their friends and family about, but also that the content that they want to consume. And that is the opportunity, and that is the exciting thing that I want to talk to you about today, because we, as travel marketeers, are facing an unprecedented opportunity to tell stories on mobile and social. But you know that. We all know that, right? We look at our friends and our family, we look at our own behaviors, we think about our customers. They are spending more time on mobile than they have ever done before, and that's only going to continue. However, the overwhelming majority, the billions and billions and billions of marketing dollars that is spent by the travel and tourism industry every single year is still going towards traditional media. Print advertising, direct mail, banner advertising on billboards, TV commercials. We are still pouring massive amounts of time, energy, and resources into the creation and distribution of media where the majority of consumers now are not spending their time. And that, I think, is the exciting opportunity that we face. And that, I think, is the importance of talking about what we call social-first content. So, what is it? Why is it so important? If you think about the way the travel industry today markets itself, and I am obviously very biased because I love the travel industry, but it is true across many other industries as well, travel marketeers today are taking, in many cases, the content that was shot for their above-the-line advertising campaigns, the magazine that they're going to run, the TV commercial that's going to go on, the billboard that they're going to have on the M4, and they are taking that content and they are dropping it onto social media as an afterthought. Now, for many rational reasons, it's expensive. Time, resource, and effort has gone into creating this content. It's the way that we've always done it. So let's put it onto social media and let's hope that it will perform. Now, we all know hope is not a strategy. It does not deliver results. And in many cases, when that content that is put onto social media doesn't perform, the unfortunate reality is the conclusion from the powers that be is that social media cannot be as impactful and should not be considered as serious a marketing channel as traditional media. And I hope out of everything that I say today, my goal is going to be to inspire and motivate and educate everyone here to actually believe and understand that that is definitely not the case. So, social-first content, in our mind, is split into sort of two components. One is who creates that content, and there are, as I'm sure you'll have heard from some of the talks today and some of your own learnings, hundreds, if not thousands of people around the world that have grown up telling stories on social media. These are content creators that are comfortable with the mobile form factor. These are storytellers that know how to help brands to communicate the important things that they used to say on TV and in magazines onto a social story. And these are the people that you should really strongly consider when you think about social-first content creation. The second is actually the disciplines that they use and the ways that you can create that content. So you can see from the slide, there's a couple of different icons, and I'll explain all of those individually. So the first, smartphone and DSLR photography, probably the easiest to understand, something we've all been familiar with. There are people in the audience now with their smartphones out there taking photos, so thank you as a start. But as a second, what that has enabled us to do is the smartphone has now become the ubiquitous, continuous capture, constant capture device that it is. We can capture anything at all times. Now, we, within our business, have a team of smartphone-only content creators. These are people that have expertise in coming up with an idea, shooting the idea, editing the idea, producing the idea, and distributing the idea all on their smartphone. And there is no reason why anybody here in the audience can't do now that. Obviously, to get to a level of quality, you have to practice, you have to be good. It's not as easy as just doing it, but it is as easy as starting in that way. And so what makes us very proud, and I hope you will see next year, is the advertising campaigns of some enormous tourism boards, some multi-billion-dollar global travel brands that have been shot by us will be distributed across our channels and out into the world, and they were shot exclusively on smartphones. So it is incredibly impactful, and it is incredibly powerful, and I'll come back to the cost benefits of that in a second. The second is drone. Drone has been talked about for a very, very long time. Everyone in the room is familiar with the power of drone. And so when I think about explaining the value that you get from drones, I think that is relatively obvious. I think perhaps the tip or the advice that I would give if you're considering using it from a commercial standpoint is that there now are regulated formulaic systems and processes that you can go through to be a drone pilot. My brother, if any of you do follow me on social media, you see I talk about him a lot. He's one of the few commercially licensed drone operators. He's very talented, of course, but also he's very well trained. And that is incredibly important because when you consider the likelihood of going out and capturing good drone content, it's high. The challenges that you may find are that if it isn't done legally and it isn't done respecting the regulations, it can be very dangerous and you may not be able to use that content. The third is video. So I know that there's a session later on this afternoon from Facebook about all the amazing and innovative things that they are doing, and I'm sure they will talk about video. Video is an enormous part of storytelling, and I'm talking actually about new form social video, not the traditional video that we've been used to in the past that would be 3, 5, 10, 15-minute long commercials talking about travel. I'm talking about 2-minute, 1-minute, 30-second, high-impact, highly engaging social videos that drive engagement and drive action. These are a very, very, very important part of your marketing, storytelling, and communication efforts. And this will range from vertical video, which is shooting specifically vertically so that it will look great on a smartphone, and it will fit with some of the live platforms, but everything from 360 virtual reality. I know that's coming up in the Facebook talk, so they will talk much better than I can about that. But those 4 icons really make up what we call structured content. This is the stuff that we're all relatively familiar with as marketeers. It's the stuff that if we're not dabbling in it, we're certainly considering it. One area that I would very, very strongly encourage and suggest we also think about is live. Now, live encapsulates Facebook Live, Snapchat, and Instagram Stories. We use Instagram Stories very, very heavily. We think it's an enormously powerful storytelling platform. We would certainly advocate anybody in the room to consider using Instagram Stories as a part of the way that they market and they communicate their brands. We see between 30 and 40 million views a week on the Instagram Stories that we put out. And so our top performing story was anywhere between 7.5 and 8 million views in 24 hours. To put that into context, the season finale of Britain's Got Talent, which is the top watched British television show this year, also got 8 million views. The season finale of the most successful TV show in the history of America ever, Breaking Bad, only got a little bit more than 8 million views for its episode. So when you think about the power of what that actually means, the power of encapsulating a live audience, it's definitely something that I would strongly recommend that you invest in. And to give you an actual practical application, we use live to tell the story behind the hero image. So let's say we're working with a hotel and they say to us, guys, could you help us to capture the amazing spirit behind the infinity pool shot and the sunset? Absolutely, we'll take that shot, but we'll use Instagram Stories to tell the story leading up to that shot, whether that is getting out of the car and being welcomed by the concierge, whether that's walking through the restaurant and having something to eat, or going to my room, opening the windows and seeing that amazing vista. The idea is that you can use multiple different platforms and multiple different social first disciplines to tell that story and to have a meaningful impact. Now, everything that I've been talking about has been focused on the heart. I've been focusing on the storytelling power, the marketing power of social first content. For hopefully the financial directors in the room, or those of us that are looking to talk about an ROI on social media, social first content has 3 very powerful, very, very impactful, practical commercial applications. The first is cost. Let's think about the way that we would create a traditional advertising campaign. And those of you that are familiar with it will know all too well how much money it costs to go into creating an advertising campaign. As I mentioned earlier, we could shoot campaigns, if you shoot social first content on a smartphone, in a matter of minutes, have it edited, processed, and distributed to 13 million people before you'd even gotten your production team on site to start looking at how they create the content. And when you think about how powerful that is from a cost perspective, I'm not talking about being marginally cheaper. I am talking about being orders of magnitude more cost effective when you consider businesses that can create social first content for you. So those of you in the room that really care about the bottom line, which of course we all should, it's very important to understand how cost effective good social first content can be. The second is scale. Now, the thing to learn and the thing to understand with scale is to understand the way most traditional travel brands and tourism boards have been set up to communicate themselves. We are a little bit more progressive in travel in that we actually communicate ourselves relatively more regularly. So we have seasonal campaigns. I'm sure the marketeers in the room can relate to the mad dash to get something together for a summer holiday campaign or a winter campaign. Industries like the car industry, where they take all of their time and their effort to produce the big annual campaign. Thankfully, we're a little bit more progressive than that. But even then, what we're talking about here is marketing towards a season versus social media, which happens all day, every second of the day. And one of the things that I love to explain to brands and that I really push is this idea of an always-on strategy and recognizing that if you aren't consistently talking to your customers on social media, on their mobile, with high-quality, engaging, social-first content, you're just not relevant. And by the time that I have driven down the M4 and I've seen that banner ad, or I've opened up the magazine and I've seen the beautiful photograph, I've already made my decision. I've already been inspired, and I was inspired when I was sitting back home and I had 5 minutes to kill in between watching a TV show, and I went onto Instagram and I saw that image. And so this is really the thing to think about when you realize how much scale you can achieve when you're creating social first content and having moments of inspiration and moments of significance for people every single day. Now the third, and for me the most important and the most impactful, is actually accountability through measurement and through data. And what this means for us and what this means for anyone who is really investing in social first content is using all the amazing advertising and marketing tools that you have through Facebook and through Instagram that allow you to start at the very top of the funnel at impressions and the first idea about thinking of travel and track all the way down through to the final transaction when the individual makes that booking. Now, there are so many steps that happen through the process, but as I'm sure you will hear later on this afternoon from Facebook, the technology is there, the ambition is there now more and more. They have amazing sales and marketing teams in Facebook and Instagram that are helping travel brands to harness what you actually do when you start by telling a good social first story. And all of that data and all of that analytics is information which actually is not that available in traditional media, but I know that is stuff that you all know. So, I want to show you an example. This is an example of how we piece together social first content. So the idea here to be mindful of, and the backstory to this is, this short video is an example of powerful social first content. It is made up of an amalgamation of pieces of content that we posted on social media before we made the final product. We looked at the data and the performance of each of the content assets, and we knew when we started to stitch these things together that we would make something that would have an impact. Now, this is posting photographs and seeing how they perform. This is posting drone videos, and this is posting slightly longer form videos to work out what's the optimal length of video and what's the right content that should be in there. So I hope you enjoy this. So hopefully you'll have recognized that that was Dubai, a place that has been shot many, many, many thousands, if not millions of times. And when you think about the way that you can tell stories and when you engage people that know how to tell a meaningful and engaging story, that video will be seen on someone's mobile phone. They'll pull it out and they'll sit down and they'll think, and I hope they'll have the same feeling that you had, that moment perhaps of inspiration and thinking, why am I sitting in this place listening to this guy when I could be somewhere else in the sun? I could be somewhere else enjoying the world and getting out and exploring. And it's that feeling that we're trying to evoke, and that feeling that's actually very, very easy to evoke if you start to create good social first content. So everything I've discussed up till now has been the theoretical, the ideas behind these things, and I thought it might be helpful to actually walk you through some practical applications, some real-world challenges that we faced with a partner who helped us to, or rather, who we helped to overcome some of the challenges, and hopefully for anyone in the room that actually hasn't seen the application of beautiful destinations in practice and working, this that I'm going to walk you through is what we did with some friends of ours in the Philippines. Again, those of you that follow me on social media know I'm very passionate about the country. I love the country, the people, and everything that it represents. And so this was an incredibly exciting opportunity for us to come to a country and help them to raise awareness of what they were doing. So coincidentally, the one thing I'd ask, have a look at the imagery which is in the slides as I walk them through. And it'll be relevant at the end why it's so important to remember some of the images that you are seeing, because these images were actually part of their advertising campaign and will come to relevance at the very end. So, who are the Philippines? For those of you that aren't aware, 7,000 amazingly beautiful islands in Southeast Asia, over 100 million people. Just over 5 million tourists last year came to the country, and around $20 billion in tourism-related revenue. Now, that in isolation is nice and is fantastic. Put into the context of some of the other players in Southeast Asia, we all know and we all love Thailand, potentially 15 to 20 times the size in terms of a revenue generated from tourism perspective. And I think it's around 28 to 30 million tourism visitors per year. So significantly larger, but actually arguably with very similar natural resources in terms of beauty. And this is a country who has obviously had a very rich culture and a rich heritage and has a whole host of beautiful visual assets that they can use. Now, I'm Scottish. I grew up in Scotland. I'm very proud to be Scottish, and we don't have waters like this. Well, maybe you could argue we do in the very, very north, but maybe one day a year. We don't have natural assets like this in many cases. The point to understand here is to try and find a way to tell the story that is right for you, because I passionately believe that we could tell amazing social first content about Scotland or about anywhere else in the world. This just happens to be a little bit easier on the eye to start with. The challenges are something that I think we can all relate to when it comes to marketing and trying to communicate our brand. 3 big challenges that we were faced with. The first was the Department of Tourism asking us, how could they raise their global brand? How could they raise awareness through the channels that actually really mattered? And if you think back to what I was saying a few minutes ago about how so much of our time is dominated by our mobile phones, and so much of that time is then dominated by social media, if you aren't having a conversation or you aren't pushing out really engaging stories on those platforms, you aren't relevant. And these guys, obviously, they bought into that and they understood that. So they said to us, how could we raise our profile on Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat, and what could we actually do? Second, how could we do that in a way that would really respect the type of people that we want coming to our country? We have a very specific group of people that we want to increase tourism from. We know that the British market, the North American market, and the European market is important to us. How could we bring more of those people to our country and make more of those individuals aware of all the things that we have? And then third, how could we create impactful assets for social media, of course, but how could we make them impactful outside of social media? And this is the key thing about social first content. This is the most important thing that I'd like for people to understand. The content itself never lives in isolation in social media. That's not the end of the journey. That is absolutely just the beginning. And I'll explain that at the very end and how that works. So that was the 3 things that they asked us to look at. We obviously came to them and said, of course we can do it, we'd love to do that, we're very proud to do it, and we delivered the things that we do best. So amazing photography assets, remember these 2 boys, they'll be relevant in a minute. Amazing drone assets, so really beautiful stories that are telling the aerial perspective. And the thing about drone to remember is that you have the ability to tell the perspective just above what's normally seen from the human eye, which in itself is actually quite an amazing experience when you see good drone footage. We're all used to seeing films being shot like this. Just slightly above that, you can actually create some amazingly powerful effects, which I'm going to show you in a second. And then obviously the pure bird's eye, which is right up at the top and looking down, and you can create some amazing content by doing that. And of course video, which I'm going to show you. So video was a very big part of what they asked us to do. Now, the social adoption of live that really worked in this partnership was a focus on Snapchat. And what we did on Snapchat was what I said earlier, the behind the scenes. What is it like to travel in a place? How can we tell the real-time story of being in a country, being at a hotel, being at a restaurant, or whatever it is we want to talk about? And how can we use that to do something impactful that goes deeper than the image and is real and raw and less put together than a video? And so what we actually ended up doing was recording our experiences on Snapchat, and we live streamed them to a huge LED screen, which was on Fifth Avenue in New York at the Philippines Embassy. And from what we've heard over the 30 days that it was running, over 5 million people walked past and engaged in the content. So it was incredibly impactful. And when you think about what that means, you are launching and you are pushing a multidisciplinary content strategy to tell the story about a place. And the Philippines is an example of one place of many, many, many that you could do, where you are engaging people in so many different touch points. And that's really what matters when it comes to social first content. So all of these elements came together, the output of which was a series of videos, photos, drones, as I said, which we pushed across social media. Millions and millions and millions of people all over the world engaged in this content. Still today, we have people from the country, Filipinos in the country and around the world, getting in touch with us and saying, I didn't realize this part of my country was so beautiful. I didn't realize it was so easy to travel to this part of the world. We have more and more people who'd never even heard of the Philippines saying, thank you for raising the awareness of it, because I'm now familiar with it as a tourist destination. And all of this happened on a mobile phone. All of this happened through social media. It cost a fraction of the cost that it would take to shoot a TV commercial. It was distributed to infinitely more people than it would have been had you then gone and paid the media to run the TV commercial. And it happened with measurability, it happened with scalability, and the output was something like this. Actually, would you mind turning the sound up, please? Thank you. So hopefully that will be very, very different to any other travel and tourism marketing commercials that you may have seen in the past. The content that we created, as I mentioned, bridging this social first content strategy with traditional content strategy, it was very exciting. I don't know if anybody saw over the course of this year through Waterloo Station and King's Cross Station, the Philippines Department of Tourism actually took over those stations, and they had banner advertisements around the station. They had digital billboards, they had escalators that were running images, and in King's Cross, they were beautiful destinations images. They were images that were showing the country, and this is billboards and banner ads and all the things that you would expect from a traditional campaign. And the power of this was that these pieces of content had been posted weeks before on social media. We had looked at the data, we had seen the top performing content, and we had gone back and said, guys, this is the content you need to go and tell the world about you, because this is the content that has resonated well on social media. And the power for that, hopefully, as we consider where this sits in the wider scheme of all the storytelling capabilities that you have, is to combine the two. Use social first content to start the story, use social first content to continue the story, and then use social first content to end the story. So thank you so much for listening. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure you'll all agree that was an excellent talk, very inspirational, and really fascinating to see. The work that you've done is just mind-blowing.
Thank you.
I think, the first thing which comes to me is that you've really flipped everything on its head. So instead of going with all the big equipment, the crews, the legacy tools and professionals, you've actually gone in with the creators, mobile first, social first, and then actually you've augmented that into physical environments.
Yes,
so,
yeah, that's the hope. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Now, I know you've got a lot of followers personally, not just for Beautiful Destinations. And I'm sure a lot of people are keen to sort of deep dive and get to know who you are a bit more. What's the team behind Beautiful Destinations?
Sure.
So perhaps just start off by telling us a little bit more about those creatives and talents that bring all of this together.
Of course, of course. So some of them are pretty high profile. Some of them are guys and girls you'll have seen on the Beautiful Destinations accounts. So we have guys that focus exclusively on smartphone photography. We have people that are real experts in DSLR photography, and we have a video team now that's a very, very big part of what we're doing. My brother, as I mentioned, who heads up the drone department, as well as being my co-founder and my business partner and my closest friend in the world and the guy that helps me put all this together. We are actually in the process, if any of you have seen on our accounts, of trying to recruit people. We are trying to grow the business. We have 30 employees now. We're growing at a very, very rapid rate, and we launched a campaign called The World's Coolest Job, which was the idea. Well, there was two ideas to it. One was we were getting around 1,000 to 1,500 direct messages every week, more than we could actually get through and more than we could read, from people saying, we really want to work for Beautiful Destinations. We are street artists in Tokyo, or we are musicians in San Francisco, and we have this ability to create content, and we want to share it with you. And so we realized that a large part of the responsibility we had to this community was to give people an opportunity to get their work out there. And so we launched this campaign on the one part to actually give back to our followers and say, guys and girls, thank you so much for supporting us. We would love for you to come and work with us, so please apply, please submit an application to be a part of the creative team. And also, we need them. Like, we need more people, so.
Yeah, there's some amazing talent all around the world. And sometimes I think that the hardest thing is actually finding it, digging it up, and working out how you can work with these people.
Yes.
Moving on to, and we're going to go to the audience for any questions. So if you do have any questions, you've got two options. You can send us a tweet at @thinkdigital. Think_tourism, rather. WTMLDN is the hashtag, and that will come straight through to me here. Or you can use Slido, which is inside the WTM app, and we're going to get your questions up straight away. So we can see a couple there. Before we dive into the questions, what I would love to understand is what makes a good partnership, working with content creators, working with the brands, getting the right results in the end, the sort of amazing things that you've just shown.
On the content creator side, I think what has been at the ethos of our business and our profile since the very beginning is recognizing people for their work. For any of you that are on social media a lot and are familiar with social media, you may have seen a few months back some of the bigger, kind of higher profile Instagram presences and Twitter presences got in trouble for plagiarizing work, and they would build their own profiles on using material from other people. I think as a starting point, a celebration of the world can only happen if you celebrate the people in it. And so a very, very important part for us is to make sure that the creators that are creating the work are credited and actually put at the forefront of what we do. If you see any post on our account from the dawn of time, we have always talked about the person that took that photo, and we've always recognized them as the author of that photo. Now, we have our own teams in-house now as we've grown, and those people who create content in some cases will put it out as Beautiful Destinations branded content. I think in most cases we'll tag them as well, but I think on a content creator standpoint, that's the first thing. I think from a brand partnership perspective, it's just exciting, really. I mean, it's just, we're living in a world today where brands are looking for ways to tell the right kind of stories, and if you can build relationships with them where they understand that you will never post their brand message on your account, even if they pay you lots of money, if we can sit down together and understand what's the story that you want to tell, who's the audience you want to tell it to, and how do you want to do that, I think you'll find that you'll build a much healthier and much more engaging partnership that way. And so tourism boards has been a learning for me. I'm not a travel guy by any stretch of the imagination. I don't have a long travel background at all. And so going in and actually learning some of the challenges that a country might have in talking about itself and then coming back and saying, okay, how do we help tell that story in short snippets in video and in amazingly powerful photos, and then how do we push it out, and how do we do that? And actually, one thing I would say, which is probably worth remembering, is social media is very forgiving, and I think there is definitely a fear with senior people within a marketing organization that a campaign has got to be completely, absolutely to the letter rounded off before it goes out. Honestly, if you post today, you're forgotten if you don't post tomorrow. So if you make a mistake, don't worry. I can't tell you the number of times that we have made mistakes and posted things on the wrong day or credited the wrong country or the wrong landmark in the early days. So it happens, and it's fine, and it goes away, and then you move on. And so I think the heart of actually building these good partnerships is to kind of understand what they want to do and then let them take from your expertise.
I think probably the reason that the work you do is so great is that you actually don't come from the travel industry. So you go out there as a consumer, consuming, creating content as you would expect it. I think everybody in the room, hopefully, will agree that unfortunately the tourism industry is full of politics. And that often gets in the way of creativity. It slows things down. Being always on is a very difficult thing for a lot of people to get their head around.
I think so. We're going to get there, though. We are going to get there. I know it. I can feel it. You see the way that people are moving. You see the way that people are communicating. And you always face challenges, no matter when you start something new, regardless of the industry that you go in. I heard a statistic, I think it was from last year, that the travel industry was the second slowest industry after financial services to adopt social media. And I think when you think about what that actually means, if I was a marketing director in in a financial institution and I was trying to market a mortgage or a loan or some kind of financial product on Instagram or on social, I can understand how challenging that might be, but not impossible. I think with travel, we have the richest wealth of content at our fingertips, right? It is an inherently visual product. It's made for social. It's made for storytelling. And so if people aren't necessarily doing it today, it's only a matter of time. And so those people that might be considering getting into the space and kind of investing more in using social media as a content creator, as a marketeer, as anyone really, you should do it, because now is the best time to do it.
So we're going to go to the questions. I'm going to go for a quick one to begin with. What's the ultimate destination for you?
That's a loaded question. That's a loaded question. I get asked that the whole time. I don't have one favorite place, I'll be honest. And there isn't one place above any other place that I really want to go. But the most amazing travel experience for me, and I've said this before when I've spoken, is I get massive enjoyment out of seeing a place on social media, thinking about what it would be like, and then going there and experiencing it in real time. And I've given an example in the past that I'll repeat. That I had that with Santorini. I saw that amazing sort of pinky orange sunset that happened over all those white roofs and blue roofs, and I saw it on social media, and we posted it on Beautiful Destinations, and it got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of likes. And I remember thinking to myself, the day that I go and see that for myself will be a massive travel wanderlust moment for me.
Have you been?
Yes, so last summer. And so hopefully that's what you guys will feel if you follow us or if you engage in good social first content. It's that kind of, it's hard to explain, but it's that moment that you know that you have to go to a place because you've seen it somewhere, and you've seen it this big, right? Like, let's not lose the context of what this is. This is like a portal into all the amazing things that you can do if you travel the world, and the mobile just starts you on that journey. So.
Now, I hate to name drop, but you haven't been to Greenland, have you?
I've not
to worry. Not to worry. It's a very nice place.
Okay, noted.
We had another question, which is about CEOs. How can you convince CEOs the value of social beyond traffic? I know this is one question that we get all the time, and it's actually quite difficult to sort of answer that, but I'm sure you've got an answer to that.
Yes. Let's have a look at the power of Facebook advertising. Facebook is the most powerful advertising platform that we have at our hands today. Instagram is built on top of the Facebook marketing tech stack now. It has many of those powerful analytics built into them. The reality is, if you sit down with the right people in Facebook and you're investing time and money in creating brilliant content that will perform on social media, you can absolutely track end to end. Now again, the Facebook guys will go into much better detail than I can, but we've been working with them on creating really engaging content for carousel ad units, which are immersive mobile visual units that actually drive a much, much deeper connection with the consumer all the way through to a transaction. So I think whoever asked that question, please come and see me outside because I want to help you to convince your CEO to start spending more money on social and doing this together because it is more and more trackable. I think we need more case studies we have to put out there of brands that have spent money on social media and actually really focused on the end-to-end funnel. We do it with our clients, actually. So we have the ability to create content for them when we shoot these campaigns. We then have the ability to help them tell that story to our audience of people all over the world. And then we do actually start taking on some of the buying of their Instagram and Facebook advertising, and that's where you start getting into the nuts and bolts of who are we targeting, how are we telling that story. If we are trying to tell the story of the Santorini sun to an 18-year-old Asian male in Tokyo, what would that image look like versus the 55-year-old housewife in Melbourne, and what would you use from a visual standpoint to get a different kind of response from those people? And we do it. It's very exciting. I think it's going to be the future of marketing. It is available, and you can do it. So, yeah, hopefully that will help start the conversation about it being more than just driving traffic. Great.
There's some brilliant questions about everything from VR to why aren't you using Twitter? We don't have time for all of those. I'm going to throw one.
I get asked that a lot, actually. I'm not very good with words.
There we go. It's better about images, right?
Yes.
You inspire people.
Yes.
So the last question on images, which I actually have for you, is this idea of live content. You showed the power of using Snapchat, for example, and then taking it out of Snapchat. But it's quite a difficult thing for brands to get a head around because I think they've just got the hang of Instagram. They understand the value of that, the way to talk through beautiful images. And actually live content, whatever platform it's on, is actually pretty unvarnished. So it's the opposite of using filters in a way.
Right, so let's think about live in terms of a spectrum. You have live, really raw with this Snapchat. And I love Snapchat. I think it's a very, very powerful tool. I think in a travel marketeer's arsenal, it's something you should seriously consider investing in. It does skew younger, and there are some challenges in terms of data and analytics that you get back from it, but it's incredibly powerful. If you do face that challenge, and maybe you're not quite ready yet to fully jump in to having a fully live and authentic story, Instagram stories is very much more curated, and obviously we're very, very passionate and pro Instagram stories. It allows you to upload pre-created content that you've already shot. So hopefully if you're following Beautiful Destinations, you'll see either later on today or tomorrow actually a very curated WTM story, and it'll be Tom and I will be walking around and we'll be going to stands and showing you live video interspersed with professionally shot photos and potentially even professionally shot video. So don't be too scared of using a tool like Instagram stories because you can mix and match these different elements of real live experiences with the more curated professional content as well. Just start doing it.
So a good reason to follow. So great insights. Thank you very much, Jeremy, for sharing all of that. We are going to be back in a few minutes with a session on content trends and local influencers, where we actually have the brands talking about how they've been using and working with that. I think what we could agree is quite challenging for brands to adapt to that. So we're going to be hearing from Sojern, Brand USA, and Contiki on that. Awesome. But that leaves me just to say thank you very much for joining us. You're going to be at DTTT Global on the 1st and 2nd of December in Brussels.
I am.
So if you are there, we look forward to seeing you there. And if you're not there, it's not too late to sign up. If you want to join, just go and speak to my colleague Ilaria, and she might be able to sort you out with some sort of WTM discount. But thank you very much for joining. We'll be back in 5 minutes, so I hope you'll all hang around for that. Please give Jeremy a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thanks, mate. Hello, welcome back, everybody. As you know, I'm Nick Hall from the Digital Tourism Think Tank. We just heard a really inspirational presentation there from Jeremy Jauncey talking about how him and the Beautiful Destinations team have been working with many, many brands to create social-first content. I think it's a real eye-opener for the sort of content that we all need to be thinking about how to produce. And for a lot of us, that means completely turning our strategies on their heads and approaching things in a completely different way. So I'm very pleased to move on from that topic to talking to some of the brands that are really thinking about what this means and how to adapt to the current trends. And I'm very pleased to introduce our panel over here. So introducing Brad King. Brad is the Vice President of Global Sales at Sojern. Tracy Lanza is Vice President of Integrated Marketing at Brand USA. And Alexi Siteropoulos, did I pronounce that correct? Great, is the Vice President of Marketing at Contiki. Now, they've all got different perspectives to share with you, but we're going to start off by hearing from Sojern because they do a quarterly piece of research which actually gives really fascinating insights about travel booking patterns and actually what travelers are doing. And really pulling that information about bookings up with quite short notice so you can actually react to that as a brand and adapt your strategy. So please welcome to the stage Brad, who's going to kick us off with this session.
Great. Thanks. Good afternoon. My name is Brad King, as Nick said. Nick, thanks for having us. The main thing that I want to talk about today is more about data and how data can do the talking. We're all marketers here. Many of us are marketers. And sometimes knowing what to do or what not to do is the most important thing we can do. So to me, there's this concept of data. But before you look at data, you need to look at today's consumers. And we are all today's consumers. And the reason that data is so important is that consumers today are probably the most sophisticated they've ever been. We are the most sophisticated consumers we have ever been. We have access to all sorts of different information on demand, right? Many of us know granular details about not only what our friends are doing, but the exact experiences that they've had while traveling, really important there. We all shop and compare these days, and we don't even really know we're doing it. We'll be on our computer for a second, we'll move to our phone, we'll go to our tablet, all the time looking at different things, calling friends. It's unbelievable the amount of information we have in front of us. We can actually shop anywhere and at any time, right? That makes it really difficult to understand the context and where people are when you're trying to market to them. And at the end of the day, I think they're all the savviest marketers, our consumers that we've approached as marketers. Now, it's really important to understand who these people are. And as my wife always tells me, meaningful relationships require insights. And she tells me probably every day. Still haven't learned. But the point of this one is that there is so much information available about the consumers that we interact with and market with today. Yet I would challenge most of you and ask you, are you actually using all of the things that are available to you in how you market to consumers, right? Sure, there's things like demographics, somebody's age, somebody's gender, household income, where they live, what their propensity to do things is, their past purchase behavior. All of these things make up the fiber of a consumer today. And when you ask consumers if brands have them figured out, 85% of them or so say, no, they don't. And they want to be recognized in some way. In travel especially, people want to be recognized. And the reason I say that is we all are in this business. We understand how complex this process is. People are said to be going to unheard of number of sites to book their travel. I heard Jeremy talked before about how actually consumers are at their happiest in many ways when they're out booking travel. I also heard a stat recently that they put more time and are more stressed about their next trip than they are about the management of their money, right? They'll give their money to a stockbroker to go do whatever they need to do, but they're going to manage that trip on their own. The travel booking process is obviously very complicated. People are going to different sites. They're on different devices, right? Different times of the day. And if you're like me and most consumers, you're not just planning for one trip. You've probably got 4 or 5 in the queue, whether it be business or leisure or what have you. It's all really complicated. That takes me to what Nick was talking about here, insights, right? Insights are extremely important, and they're more readily available to people today than they've ever been before. Sojern works with a group of travel aggregators, and as consumers go to those travel aggregators, such as OTAs, meta-search sites, hotel companies, et cetera, we've got a partnership with those companies to actually gather that data anonymously and use that as a targeting mechanism, 1, to understand consumer behavior, and 2, to actually target the messages that we're trying to convey to consumers on, say, a hotel brand's behalf, to ensure that the message we're giving them is extremely relevant. And when you think about advertising today, if it's not relevant, it's a nuisance. If it is relevant, it's a benefit. And I think that's where we all want to get. As Nick said, every quarter, Sojern, with a pretty quick turnaround, is able to produce our global travel insights. We also do bespoke studies for clients that we work with, or we'll focus on specific verticals, like the hotel vertical, or specific geographies, like a focus on Florida here. Sign up for those reports. You'll get them every month or every quarter that they're generated, and it's really interesting thing to see how trends are changing. So Nick also asked me to look towards a few of the key trends that came out of our most recent report. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there, and I think the one thing I want to convey to you more than the actual trends that we're seeing is that the insights that we produce are really just a visualization of all the data that we have to bear, that we can bring to bear, right? So if you can visualize that trends in certain cities are changing, the demand for those cities, trip length is changing because people's behaviors are changing, that is all backed up by data, which as marketers can be used to actually go out and target consumers with the most appropriate message at the most appropriate time. This one was interesting to me. Mostly US searchers here. This study we did was in conjunction with Google and DoubleClick, thanks to a recent partnership we just announced. But for those people in and around the United States for the most part, these are the top 5 fastest growing search cities that we saw this March versus last March. Thing that's interesting to me is underneath of these cities, so you've got Reykjavik, Havana, Toronto, Mexico City, and Tokyo. That's all great, but if you can't see it, it's small. But if you look at the audience makeup underneath each of those cities, you'll see that really none of these groups of people are the same. So while you may be a hotel company or you may be a travel brand trying to market to people because you have assets in one of these 5 cities, you'll notice that the message that perhaps you're sending to people who want to go to Tokyo is absolutely not the same as the people who want to go to Reykjavik. You've got different gender makeups. You've got different points of origin. They're interested in different things. That audience information and that context is extremely important to how you talk to those consumers. And that's where insights can really help you. This one's interesting. This is more about device, right? Obviously, mobile is, I think we finally reached the year of mobile, or maybe it was last year after so many years of people saying it. The point of this slide here is it compares what desktop and mobile search looks like over the week, right? The important thing that I took away from this was that, well, 90% of bookings, at least out of the US and some larger places, Europe to be specific, are coming from a desktop. The sheer number of travel searches that are coming from mobile is obviously growing. I think we all know that. But that number really spikes Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, maybe that's intuitive to all of us here, right? Who wants to pick up their computer when they don't have to on the weekends? We're on our mobile phones sitting around doing a lot of searches. But it's just that kind of behavior and understanding that kind of behavior that will allow us as marketers to actually match the messages that we're sending people based upon the device they're on. Really important thing, something to consider. Not only the message you're giving them, but where consumers are receiving that. Another one, Travel Tuesdays. I don't know if people see this across the board. What we've noticed is search and booking numbers are highest Tuesday, on Tuesday, day of the week. Really interesting. Is what you're doing leading up to Tuesdays any different than what you're doing leading up to a Saturday? It should be. And again, with this data-driven approach to marketing to consumers and understanding these people, that's one interesting way of understanding and changing your actually marketing tactics to match what consumers are doing. One last thing, and I thought this one was very interesting. So looking ahead, when we look at December travel and what people are showing us demand for, this is the day that they would actually be leaving the region that I've put up here. You've got Western Europe, Australia, Japan, and Singapore. Now, this proves that this is not a one-size-fit-all industry. I think we all know that. It's just that up until this point in time, we haven't had the data assets to actually change how we talk to each of these groups of people. Basically, all this is showing is for people in Western Europe, these are the biggest days of departure that they have planned. Compare that to Japan, entirely different for the most part. Now, if you're a marketer and you're trying to attract people coming to your destination, the message you're giving somebody who is originating from Japan should absolutely differ, and the offer should absolutely differ than the offer that you're giving to somebody originating from Western Europe. So I think my final takeaway on all this is there are many more insights in the studies that we produce. Insights is really just a visualization of what can be done from a marketer standpoint, and I'd ask you to consider that. And the biggest point of view I think you can take away from all of this is that we've moved to an age away from market segmentation to an age of mass personalization, right? It's a big number. We're going to go after people, but we can give them individual messages. And the thing to remember is that we have moved past the concept of marketing to proxies, and we can all market to people. Thank you.
So, great insights to get us started. Moving over to Tracy, I'd like to invite you to the stage. Tracy and I had a phone call a short while ago where we discussed some of the work that Brand USA have been doing. And I think really perfectly handing over to that, one of your biggest challenges is how to then appeal and talk to individuals on those personal interests. So tell us a bit more about what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you. There I am. And there we are. So I'm from the United States. Hopefully a few of you are familiar with the United States. We are 50 states, 5 territories, and 1 District of Columbia. But I'm from New England. New England isn't really on the map, but I can tell you lots about it. It is my favorite place to go in the world. I lived in Cape Cod for 10 years. Whenever I have a chance for a vacation, I go there because of the quaint fishing village, because of the wonderful lobster, because I love to sail, because I love Moby Dick. And if you don't believe me, I have a whale tattooed on my arm. But you're not going to get that from the map necessarily. And we all know that successful tourist destinations tell a singular story. They have a magnetizing vision about who they are and what you're going to experience when you get there. You've got the city of romance, Paris. You've got the home of Shakespeare, Great Britain. It's hard for the United States to really have one of those single visions because we have so much stuff that makes us interesting, and there's so much different stuff that you can do when you get to us. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the bare bones strategy that we're putting in place so that you can see, if you sat through Jeremy's wonderful speech, if you listen to Nick, I'm going to show you how we try to think through our storytelling. So we have our strategic framework, which is the 3 Ps. So the first P is possibility. Our strategic foundation that we were based on when we were first launched in 2012 is this idea of possibility. That is something that everyone that tells us why they want to come to the United States in some way or another tells a story of all that they want to be or experience when they come to the United States of America. The second is a new pillar that we're able to bring to our storytelling, which is persona. We did a year-long survey to really identify those trip motivations, those segmentations that we can use to really target the right person at the right time with the right message. And then finally, we have a unique thing happening in the United States right now where the dollar is very strong. So it means that we have to work a little harder to get people to come to the United States and not put our trip off. So what we're using is this idea of proximity, using our hub destinations and telling a story 5 hours around that hub destination to show people how to get the most bang for their buck, their real, their peso, their yuan. So I'm going to just go through this really, really quickly. Our foundation is the United States of awesome possibilities. And while we all get really excited about this back in the office, what is interesting is that we also hear from travelers that is a little bit overwhelming, this idea of possibility. So how we're trying to make it real is by talking to them with a trip motivation that is relevant to the way that they're feeling. And personas are not demographics. Any one person can really feel simpatico with any one of these personas. The first is the excitement persona that's highly experiential. It's very bucket list oriented. People might want to come see the Hollywood sign, the Empire State Building. They may want to go to the Grand Canyon, and obviously we want them to come here too. But there's a lot of people that have already been to the United States and they don't want to go to the Empire State Building. These are the folks we call the local, travel like a local people, and what they're looking for is a deeper cultural experience. Lots of travelers from the UK, Canada, Australia, a lot of the English-speaking countries really want a different experience. Rather than coming to the Empire State Building, they might want to go to Brooklyn. They might want to go to Harlem or one of the wonderful neighborhoods in New York City. And then finally, there's the escape persona, which is pretty much as you'd expect. It's those folks who want to relax and recharge and get away from themselves, okay? And then finally, we have this idea of proximity. And as I mentioned before, this is our value proposition. This is, you know, the big V value versus the little v value, not just based on price. And what we call this is that this and that strategy. So you can go to New York City, and you can also go to the Hudson Valley. You can go to Chicago. There's also lots of national parks. You can go to San Francisco. You can climb Mount Tam. So these are the 3 elements of our strategic framework. And as you've heard before, we really believe that social first is traveler first. And I will bring this to life better than any kind of facts and figures from Facebook just by asking, how many of you over the last year have seen a post on your social feeds of a friend going to Iceland? Okay, So what we learned from Social Versus Traveler First is people are very willing to change their travel plans based on what they see on their feeds. And so for us, we want to be in those moments when people are making their travel decisions, when they're bragging about the trips that they've taken, and when they're dreaming about the places they want to go. Okay? So quickly, again, like Jeremy said earlier, we are moving away from the big TV campaign. We don't believe that that is the best way to invest our money, and instead, we want to make sure that we're providing content during those moments, in those places, during those day parts when people are most receptive to the story. And by the way, we want people to share their stories with us, and we're willing to share those back as the most genuine, authentic voice that you can have. And so as we talk about influencers, we've tried a couple different things this year. We've tried macro influencers. If you look here, right there with the guy that kind of looks like Pauly Shore, his name is Luisito. He's from Mexico. We sent him to LA, and he did 2 20-minute videos, each of which got 1 million views in about 4 weeks. It was insane to watch. It was the highest performing videos we've ever done as Brand USA, and it cost some money. Did I have control over him? I had some control over him. Mostly I hoped he wasn't going to be naked or swear or put anything up there that I couldn't control. But I also work with small influencers. And there are 2 right here. I've got Chase Dong. I don't know, is he working up there? I don't know if he's working. But anyway, we sent him, anyway, he's up there. We sent him on a 3-month journey through the United States national parks. He's from Beijing. He just got back. And we're using him, and we will probably create a larger influencer than he actually is, but we have access to all this rich content, and I was able to give him lots more direction than I was through Luisito or even Na, who we also sent to LA so we could do a test and learn with the Brazil audience. And then finally, we focus a lot on thematic programs, road trips being our most important. And what we do there is send people on the road with a driver and capture all the different experiences, some of them unsuspected, some of them expected, that can be had on a trip through the United States. Because what that does is give people a real, human, genuine, authentic experience about how people can travel through the United States, and then I get all that rich content and B-roll that I can then chop up, stitch together, and put together and contextualize across different media so people can experience it in the way that they're most willing to be talked to. So, oh, there's Chase. We'll listen to him for 2 seconds in case any of you speak Mandarin.
我现在是在美国大提顿国家公园的门口。这次在美国国家旅游局的帮助下，我将进行一次。
There he is. So we will. So we are basically editing all of that content and pushing it through WeChat and Sinweibu in China to create this huge, wonderful experience for all kinds of travelers from China who are interested in the national parks adventure. So in case any of that seems complicated, I thought I'd show you kind of our eye chart. These are the 14 markets that we use across all of our media, all paid, earned, and owned media. And what we're doing is contextualizing it and localizing it based on persona. So for instance, in the United Kingdom, I mentioned earlier, this is a local market, so we want to make sure that we are talking to people in that voice and sharing those kinds of destinations that are most interesting. And it really runs the gamut all the way through to our friends in China, in Brazil, where there's a super high energy traveler. And then you've got our friends in China who still are looking for a high energy trip, but are more likely to be spectators rather than participants. For us, there are 4 platforms that we'll be focused on. And the thing that's really critical for me is this ownability thing. There are lots of beautiful beaches. There are lots of white sand beaches. And we have certainly been in a situation where we have used a photo that was in Madagascar for San Diego. And there's been a few instances of that. I'm sure we all have that experience. But there are 4 themes that we can truly own from the United States of America. One is pop culture, love it or hate it. Our biggest exports are music and movie and literature. And we will continue to embrace that and push that out in a way that is compelling and attach it to travel so that pop culture becomes a method of cultural exploration Road trips, as I mentioned, is our #1 performing pages across all of our websites. I think that it is, not only is it ownable from a US perspective, people actually travel dream around this idea of road trip and freedom. So we have lots of fun with that. The great outdoors, we've just spent the last year celebrating the 100th anniversary of the national parks. We even put out an IMAX movie focused on the great outdoors, which has won all kinds of awards for best documentary on IMAX screens. And then finally, the new one that we'll be putting out, which is kind of the, I don't want to call it the antidote, but probably the bookend to the great outdoors, is this idea of neighborhoods. And the reason I'm calling it neighborhoods rather than cities or urban is because neighborhoods, from a perspective of the partners that I work with, all the destinations within the United States, really gives me an opportunity to tell wonderful travel stories about smaller areas where you might get a great cup of coffee or a cool pizza or see a movie or people watch. And that is a much better way for me to tell stories than rather than showing cityscapes. So with that, what I'm going to share with you are those things that I'm fascinated with now, what we're doing to shore ourselves up, and where we're headed in the future. And this is kind of the Bible that I hold my team to. We want to pick the hardest working social channels in each of our markets. We cannot be all things to all people, and we can't be everywhere. We just don't have those resources. I doubt anybody really does. So we're only going to work in the top 2 or 3 channels in each of our markets that we can measure and show an ROI. We want to execute brilliant basics. Until we can get the basics down, we don't do too much innovation, but at the same time, I mandate innovation. When Nick and I were talking, one of the things that I'm really rabid about is test and learn, test and learn, test and learn. I am happy to fail quick. I'm happy to fail first, and then get back up and try again. And then finally, as you all know, content is currency. But from what's coming next, the cool things that we're really looking at are Snapchat in terms of its episodic content. We continue to push itineraries. We are really, really focused on micro-influencers versus macro-influencers. And then, because I've got to stop, this idea of messaging, of automation, of machine learning, of convergent thinking is basically what takes up my brain space 24 hours a day, because I'm fascinated by it. So hopefully next time I get to talk to you guys, I'll have some case studies on that one. And with that, that's me. Thanks.
Thank you. I have to say, Tracy was giving me her very, very complete ideas about what the potential of messaging is. So it's probably a good opportunity to plug our session on messaging, bots, and AI tomorrow morning at 10:30 in the Inspire stage. And I believe, Tracy, you're going to be taking front row there with your opinions. Excellent. OK. So lastly on the panel, before we go into a discussion, and this is also your opportunity to start posting questions through the WTM app on Slido. Do post your questions for the panel. We'll put them to them. But now I'm going to hand over to Alexei. And if I understand correctly, Contiki has completely turned everything over and started approaching things differently. So tell us more about that.
I shall. So when Nick first, we had a conversation, and he asked me to sort of tell everybody about what content means to Contiki. And I thought I could launch into this long journey over the couple of years that we've done in terms of changing the approach to marketing. He reminds me I have 7 to 10 minutes, and I cut it down to something that hopefully doesn't sound like a cliche, but really content is everything, is at the heart of everything that we do, whether that is a broad-reaching social media campaign. So the road trip, which you can see on your left, is a program that we've run for 5 years now, where we take 15 of the world's biggest YouTubers to a particular destination. This last year, it was just in Peru. And that's something that is super content focused, as you would expect, and delivers broad reach, 30 million plus views across all channels from that side. We haven't taken road trips, big part of the US, maybe next year, Tracy, we'll talk. All the way down to very focused at the very pointy end of the purchasing path for Contiki. So a trip that you can see up here, Scandinavia, all of the photography that is done for this trip and the itineraries that are written for this trip are sourced through influencers. As an influencer shot that we use promoting it. It has influencer photography throughout, written by travel journalists. So we see content fitting everywhere throughout our marketing mix. And it really has come down to how we've also structured our team and built out our structure to help facilitate that. So in terms of team skill sets, ensuring that we have people who have a content focus and a content background. So perhaps moving away from more generalist marketers into people who have content experience, but also in the structure. I think if you turn back the clock sort of 4 or 5 years, there were a lot of people who in their teams had digital specialists. Now, digital has become such a core part of what every marketing team does that as a general rule, you expect digital fluency from all of your team members. So the idea of a digital specialist today seems a little bit strange and will continue to. And that's the same way that we've approached content. So we have the structure where the content team sits as a full service throughout our marketing team, servicing all other functions. And the idea is that at some level, everybody has some level of fluency in terms of creating great content. So that's been a big shift for us. And I just wanted to touch on talking to you guys, I think 4 of the things that are sort of hot topics for us in conversations around the water cooler in the office. What are the things that are sort of primarily front and center in terms of our thoughts and what are either keeping us up at night or we're seeing as great opportunities in terms of content and in terms of influencers? I think there's an old adage that, you know, content is king. Again, a cliche that's probably been heard thousands and thousands of times. But I think one of the things that has become clear and that we've seen definitely is that content has retained its throne even though there's been a massive surge in terms of how we work with and how we use influencers. It's never been best practice with influencers to treat them as a media channel, to just use them for their reach or their distribution, although there are a lot of marketers who have done that. That is becoming less and less viable. I think one of the main things I hear when I talk to influencers is about the impact of algorithms and platform algorithms and network algorithms in terms of how their content is distributed. So there's much less reliance now on just an influencer who can get reach because they have an audience. It comes down to now, and a lot of the platforms are building this into their platforms and into their technology, is that the content still has to be front and center. It still has to be great content for it to be shared. And Facebook or YouTube and all of the other networks are now putting a lot of effort into the technology that allows them to surface the best content. And we've seen this come through as well. So we did a piece with a YouTuber called Devon Supertramp, which a guy some of you may know, about a month ago. And we actually put a lot of effort into this. And to touch on some of the points that were talked about before, looking at the data, what has worked in the past, and really crafting a great story. And the benefit for that, for us, is that that piece of content is probably way too small for you to read. About 1.3, 1.4 million views on that piece of content that we created. And if you contrast that to the surrounding pieces of content on his channel, which were sort of 200,000, 300, 400, it just goes to show that you really need to still put the effort into craft great content if you expect that distribution to come. So you can't just rely on an influencer having reach. Micro-influencers, topic of the day, it sounds like. Again, for us, someone like Devon is fantastic with his 4 million subscribers on YouTube, but those people are so few and far between, and you do have to relinquish a little bit of control in terms of how you work with influencers who have broad global reach. We have a program which we've just launched called the Travel Project, which allows us to work with micro-influencers who have smaller reach, but who are much more passionate brand advocates who focus on a particular niche or focus on creating content in a particular way. And so whilst they don't have the same global reach, millions of followers and millions of subscribers, they become much better brand advocates, and the content that you get out of that you can share and push through your own channels becomes a lot more powerful. So micro-influencers, and I think one other area which is new to us is actually how we've looked to integrate influencers through the product experience as well. So influencers have always been a great marketing channel. This year we took our first steps into integrating those influencer relationships that we have into our product. So there's 2 trips that Kentucky runs. One of them is called Munch, one of them is called Snap. Each of those is actually led by an influencer. So the Snap trip is a trip around Europe, so you still get to see the sights of the Mediterranean, but what you also get is a chance to improve photography skills, learn about building a social media audience from a prominent Instagrammer. Likewise, the Munch, we have a celebrity chef from Australia who is actually going to take the people around on that trip, teach them about the local delicacies and food experiences in all of those particular places. So actually taking that influencer engagement that our audience have and actually putting that into a product that is saleable as well. The second point, which again has been touched on in a number of different places, is about respecting the path to purchase. I think traditional marketers or marketers traditionally have followed this very linear approach to how people buy travel. And that is, you become aware of it, or you decide that you have a need, you have a consideration set, then you make a purchase, and then you experience it. The reality is that that is just not how people buy travel today. The experience, or the example that you can see on screen here, someone who will see a beautiful shot in someone's Instagram feed, decide that, in this instance, Croatia is somewhere they're interested in. Well, how much does it cost to fly to Croatia, and what sort of, you know, how long does it take to get there? Okay, now I actually want to see which islands are the most beautiful and places that I might, you know, I'll look again at some videos online. Okay, well, you know, should I stay in a hotel or a pension? How do I do that? Watching some sailing videos to see what that's like. What's the currency there? Is it on the euro? Is it not? People bounce between this idea of really inspirational content, really practical content on a very short time scale over and over again. And it's really important from a content perspective to be respectful of that. We need to create content that answers the questions that consumers have at each of those levels and have that available at all times and let consumers self-select what's important to them based on their stage of the buying cycle. So this is very much a way that we look and that we break down and structure our content creation process to make sure that when we do go out to market and when consumers are consuming our content, it fits with what their expectation is. Data and personalization, again, I think we just touched on this. A great quote that I love, data is the oil of the 21st century. The challenge for us, and we are still as a brand at the early stages of our journey on this front, and that is how can we take the content that we create and how can we marry that up in a personalized way to make it as powerful as possible to the consumers who are consuming it. The challenges with that, yes, they are technology challenges, and it's very important from this perspective, and the next one I'll talk about as well, that technology actually has a seat at the table when we're talking about content. Maybe not in the creation of it, if you've ever met our tech team, but definitely in terms of the way that we distribute it and the way that we measure it. And from this perspective, there are some other considerations outside of technology, and that is also to do with volume. So we've started doing personalization, and if you have, you know, we personalize on four different segments of a consumer's journey. They are around the place they want to go, their experience level of travel, the cost, and duration. And for us, if you look to personalize and pull those segments out, what's the volume of content that you need to create to satisfy that? So something that you might have on your website, for example, and you need to create 6 different versions of a piece of content to satisfy all of the different segments. The power is there. There's huge benefits to be gained, but there's also a big challenge that needs to really be a considered point in terms of how you're actually developing that content. And the second piece to that goes hand in hand is about measurement and what tools we have in place to understand the impact of content, not just on some of the soft metrics around engagement or time on site or you know, other sort of soft metrics from a digital perspective, but how does that actually follow through in a long and considered process with many steps, and what's the impact and what's the attribution of that on purchase? I don't have the answer on that. I wish I could tell you guys. We're still going through the process ourselves, as are probably many other people in the audience today. But a big thing that's going to be hot topic for us moving forward. Another one I just want to touch on, again, as we have gone through this process ourselves, is this idea that we want to think more like a publisher. And I think this is something that we've had a few false starts on, and we've made some, you know, in the early days, probably made a few mistakes and took some learnings. But it's something I hear a lot from marketers, and I guess the thing on it is to really step back and take a good think about what that actually means. And is it right for your business? So one way that you will certainly fail if you're looking to think like a publisher is if you take your existing marketing team and say, guys, you are now content creators, and you now are going to operate like publishers. There's a very big difference in skill set between a traditional marketer, even a content marketer, someone who's an editor who creates content, or a content creator. That's on that continuum. There is a very big difference in terms of skill set and approach. So where is the right place to sit on that? Do you have the right skill sets? And if not, do you need to bring them into your group? And also the last one is also appetite for risk as well. So I know I talked about Devon Supertramp. This is a piece we did with him last year. It's a video about cliff diving, right? So which as a travel operator, as a tour operator, is a very touchy subject and quite controversial for us. As a content creator, they don't think twice, because a little bit of risk, a little bit of danger, something controversial, something with a little bit of drama is great in terms of how you create really great, well-performing content. And this video's delivered us nearly about 4 million views. But you need to think about that as a brand. You need to think about that as a custodian of your company. What level of risk are you willing to take to think like a publisher and to actually act and execute a content strategy? And that's it, guys. Thank you very much.
Right, let's go straight to the discussion. I know we're running a tiny bit late on time, so let's see if we have any questions from the audience. And whilst we load that up, we'll have a quick chat about what you've just presented. So I think really different perspectives. We've started with data and insight and how to use intelligence about booking patterns and what people are searching for. You revealed the shift onto mobile, when that's happening and how important that space is. You spoke about how you're tapping into that. And I think, Tracy, what you've shared is somewhere probably in the middle, really. So I'm going to go straight to you, Tracy, and ask, what is that operational shift that needs to take place within an organization? How is that looking for Brand USA?
So it's interesting because it's got pieces of truly operational. In some ways, I think I'm more of I'm in charge of operations versus marketing, because we have had to change how we're staffed and really rethink about people's roles. Where does social belong? At one point it sat in content, now it's sitting in media. I don't know if that's the final solution, but that was something that is a really big shift. We're also looking at the agencies we use. You know, I've been around long enough, so at one point, you know, you would do a 60-second video and cut it down to a 30, cut down to a 15. There is no possible way to cut down to a 6. You know, that gets built from the ground up, and so it's really trying to make sure that the agencies and the creative directors that you're working with understand the platforms you're working on, which is really critically important. And then, of course, metrics becomes the conversation of the day.
And how do you respond to intelligence quickly? You know, there's this shift and need to be live and go live and work with an always-on content calendar. So how do you look at the opportunity and quickly turn that into something that you can use?
Yeah, difficult. It's not an easy feat, and it comes down to the philosophy within the team, but also one of the things that we've done is we've actually brought a lot of our content creation in-house. So we have an in-house video team, an in-house photography team, and editors who can write. So that gives us the ability to respond as quickly as possible in real time. But it is about having the flexibility in terms of the structure and the process and your content calendar to be able to facilitate that, and building in dead space and free time, knowing that you are actually going to need to respond, and then changing the philosophy of the team. So, you know, we have WhatsApp groups, so as soon as someone sees something in real time, whether it's a meme that's come online or, you know, something happened at the Oscars or whatever, that goes around live no matter what time of day or night.
So this shift to mobile and social and content first is also about how you work with the same mindset then?
100%.
Yeah. Are your team messaging each other, working on content together?
All day.
Yeah, so it's really different. And we've got to ditch email as a medium altogether, I think. Outlook is out the window. Well, we've got some really good questions. So we've got Anonymous. Everyone's anonymous in this audience. I'm not quite sure why. Asking how you find your influencers, Tracy.
So there's a number of different ways. Obviously, we're in travel, so people tend to kind of percolate up to the top. We also have an agency. One of our social agencies will identify influencers for us. And then very often, because I've got community managers in each of our 14 markets, they will identify relevant influencers that seem to be very interesting and generating great content.
And Brad, in terms of what you're doing with your clients, how is this matching with their content and influencer strategies, and then actually targeting and engaging people?
Yeah, I think the thing that we're seeing is that whether we like it or not, computers are going to take over the world. And a lot of what we do for our clients is based on machine learning, and it actually helps us to react faster to our clients' needs by serving up the right ads, right content tied to those ads on their own without human intervention. So I think to the extent that machine learning can be used, a lot of what we think is true is not true by the time we get to it as humans. And if you have that machine constantly running, you're able to understand what works the best and what doesn't, and kind of take out that human factor.
Okay, so just getting more and more intelligent then. Well, there's a really interesting question that's popped up here, which is regarding the advancements in content distribution. Aren't our target groups missing out on more content diversity since everything is precisely selected? So I don't know if anybody wants to volunteer themselves to give an opinion on that. Maybe you don't agree.
You know, we just launched a new site last week, and it is personalized. And it will personalize, so if you're searching for beaches, you will be served up beaches, but not to the exclusion of all else.
Yeah.
It's always a risk with personalization that you end up providing a vanilla experience for everyone. But again, that comes back to looking at the data and making sure that you're making improvements. I mean, the reverse is also true, where if you only have one version for all people, you still provide a narrow experience. At least this way, it's aimed and suited to specific audiences.
Yeah, we got another question, which is about working and thinking like a startup. And is it the right approach to try and be the jack of all trades, or is it a better approach to build a network of experts and work in that sense? What have you found has been the success of Contiki?
So we have, as I mentioned, in-house teams, but we also have great resources, be they freelancers or agencies that we can call on. We find that we use agencies a lot less nowadays because we can provide full service in-house from the marketing team. But we still couldn't execute everything that we do without having a great network. So I know that's a really vague answer, I'm sorry, but having that expertise in-house allows you also to make the right decisions, be able to set direction, to be able to fact check what you're getting back from agencies and back from other people as well.
Great. And last question, which is really from me actually, is we see a huge importance placed on reach when people talk about influencers. And this has for quite a long time been the #1 metric that a lot of brands, whether destinations or businesses, go for. And you touched a little bit about this in the presentations. How can you then demonstrate the results of the work you do? Where do you actually see that reach happening if it's not through the influencers? If it's working with micro-influencers with much smaller networks?
Right. Well, that's exactly where we are right now. And I, as I talk to people just this week, a lot of people are asking that same question. One of the big aha moments for me in the course of our large influencer initiative this summer is that our research department is taking that reach and that CPM and using it as part of our ROI, the same as if it was paid media. So to me, that was a small, kind of a large victory actually, that I could say, well, I've got I might have a TV or an online video that I've put some paid media against it, but I also have Luisito Comunicas from Mexico, and I've got an apples-to-apples comparison that contributes to my ROI the same way. So I don't know if that's exactly the answer you're looking for, but to me that was a big win, certainly internally.
Yeah, I think for us, one of the things is looking not just at the reach as the views of a video, for example, as a vanity number, but also looking at the engagement, and I think this takes a little bit more effort and a bit more time. Dive into the comments on YouTube, see what people are saying, seeing if those smaller micro-influencers actually have more engagement and a stronger, more passionate following, which we often see. We will proportionally see a lot more commentary about us as a brand on the micro-influencers we work with than we do on some of the larger influencers who go out to a much wider market.
But ultimately, you still need to hit those numbers. 8 million live stream. Have we got that on the agenda? Trying to beat America's Got Talent.
Yeah, exactly.
We can do it.
It's a challenge. I think we all have to sort of test and fail, as you said. So I think we'll be continuing to work on this. I think this will be the center of a lot of discussions to come. But I think learning from each other is one of the key things that has actually benefited both within teams and amongst the whole industry. So I'd like to say thank you very much to all three of you for joining and sharing your thoughts and opinions on this. We're running a bit over time, but of course we have people from Sojern and Brand USA joining us at Global. So I would just like to invite everybody to join us there. And please give the panel a round of applause. Thank you very much.